Joining me now, Republican Congressman from Florida's 1st District, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, thanks for joining me, sir.
Well, it's good to be on, Liz, and very exciting news today in the House Judiciary Committee. We had the Attorney General tell us that he does have the authority to appoint a special counsel. Now, we've been seeing these facts unfold with even a Russian informant telling the FBI as early as 2009 that there was evidence to suggest that bribery and kickbacks were being used to undermine the United States' uranium assets. So 3 months ago, I joined 19 other members of the Judiciary Committee in demanding a special counsel. Today, the Attorney General has said he has the authority to appoint one, and I'm eager for him to use that authority to restore the rule of law.
Right, and let me ask you, sir. So this morning, Attorney General Sessions, when he was testifying in front of your committee, he was a bit vague about whether or not he would exercise that authority, whether he would appoint a special counsel, and he did not say whether the Department of Justice was already investigating these things. Now, to my understanding, the reason that a special counsel would be appointed versus just the Department of Justice would depend on whether there was any conflict of interest. Do you believe there's conflict of interest enough, I guess, under or associated with Attorney General Sessions that he should appoint a special counsel rather than investigating it himself?
Oh, absolutely, there should be a special counsel appointed, and here's why, Liz. Rod Rosenstein, who's currently Jeff Sessions' right-hand man and top deputy, was actually the United States Attorney in Maryland who had his signature block on the pleadings that sealed from the Congress and the American people this important information about the Uranium One deal, and specifically the bribes and kickbacks that were facilitating the undermining of the United States' uranium assets. And so since Mr. Rosenstein was involved as a U.S. attorney, since Bob Mueller in 2009 was the head of the FBI, certainly Mueller would be conflicted, Rosenstein would be conflicted, and so the only acceptable path forward is to have the Attorney General use the authority that he admitted he had today, appoint a special counsel, and let's really get to the bottom of what happened with the Clinton Foundation. I mean, I think a lot of us see a lot of evidence that the Clinton Foundation was a money laundering racket so that people could go and influence the State Department and other aspects of our government. And so I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot of action very quickly and that we'll see the Attorney General do what we've urged him to do now for over 3.5 months.
Right. And imagine that situation if one special counsel investigating the Clinton Foundation and Uranium One was investigating and interviewing the other special counsel, Robert Mueller, on why he didn't notify the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States about this Russian corruption. But Congressman, let me ask you, when we're talking about this evidence that appears to be a pay-to-play scheme between the Clinton Foundation and Russian business interests, do you believe that this will find, or do you believe this to be quid pro quo?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, it's just too much of a coincidence, Liz, that you've got the Clinton Foundation taking over $140 million from Russian oligarchs. At the same time, you have Bill Clinton giving a $500,000 speech to a bunch of folks over in Moscow. And you've got informants who want to tell their story about how Russia uses bribes to try to influence policy in the United States of America. What's frustrating is that testimony that could have told us long ago about the risk that we faced from this Uranium One deal, that was sealed away from us. And actually, Mr. Rosenstein had a role in that process. That's why we've got to have a special counsel. But certainly, there's a lot of evidence that suggests there was quid pro quo and that the Clinton Foundation was the vehicle that gave Russians special access.
And Congressman, you've been harsh on Attorney General Sessions. You've said that he hasn't done his job and he hasn't been answering questions related, to the Clintons themselves, Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State and her email scandal, about the dossier, the Fusion GPS dossier, about the Clinton Foundation, then, of course, about this Uranium One deal. Did Attorney General Sessions answer any of your questions today in his testimony, or are those all still up in the air?
Well, the key question that the Attorney General answered today was whether or not he had the power to do what is necessary. And he said he does. I mean, he said in direct response to one of my questions that he can appoint a special counsel. Where I didn't get an answer is whether or not he would actually use that authority. Jim Jordan of Ohio, Andy Biggs of Arizona, myself, we were really pressing him to use that authority and to proceed. He intends to have special prosecutors engaged from the professional level to make recommendations about whether or not a special counsel would be needed. We'll see if that yields the outcome that I think justice requires.
Right, and aside from the Uranium One deal, the possible quid pro quo with the Clinton Foundation, we pivot over to this other scandal, this Trump dossier that was created by Fusion GPS in tandem with Christopher Steele, who was a foreign intelligence agent. This is something that I think is extremely serious to investigate, that would warrant a special counsel here, because of the reports that the FBI actually paid Christopher Steele after the Democrats stopped paying him. And if so, I don't understand how that would not, under any circumstances, qualify as collusion with the Russians if Christopher Steele, as a foreign intel agent, had gotten information from the Russians and then the FBI used that as a justification to tap Trump. I mean, that right there is a question I think even more pressing than the Uranium One question.
Well, you've connected all the dots, Liz. We've got a circumstance where the Democratic Party was paying a company to go and pay Russians to undermine the President of the United States. That is quite literally the definition of collusion. What's interesting is that Attorney General Sessions was asked 3 times today whether or not the FBI paid for this activity to occur in Russia in coordination with Russians, and he would not answer that question. He would not tell us whether or not the FBI was involved in funding opposition research against Donald Trump and then potentially even using that information as a basis for FISA warrants so that there could be spying on U.S. citizens. This could be a real evolving scandal, Liz, and you're right, it could be even bigger than Uranium One if we had the FBI paying for information and then using it to spy on Americans.
And one final question, Congressman, before we go. If the Department of Justice were already investigating these various aspects of these different scandals involving the Clintons and the Russians, first of all, would the public be informed of this? Would you know about this, and do you know about this?
Well, Liz, we did not get a straight answer on that question. We were not told whether or not there's an investigation ongoing now, so we would not know that. It's my belief that the current folks at the FBI and Department of Justice could not possibly proceed in such an investigation because they're all inherently conflicted. So many of the professional people at Justice and the FBI would literally be witnesses in that investigation, so they could not possibly conduct the investigation under federal conflict of interest standards. That's why we need a special counsel. The Attorney General said today he could do it. Now we need to actually see the job get done.
Right, now he needs to do it. And I suppose that's why Attorney General Sessions, in his confirmation hearing, said he would recuse himself from anything involving both Trump or the Clinton Foundation, since he did have conflict there. Congressman Gaetz, thanks for coming on the show, sir. I appreciate it.